It has come to my attention that the job market is a disaster, and I'm going to tell you how to get around it and get the job that you want, but it's not going to take the form that you thought, which is going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and that's okay. It'll be worth it anyway. I am Joshua Lisec. This, of course, is Daily Persuasion. I am the New York Times bestselling author and co-author, a ghostwriter of 100 nonfiction books now, and a certified hypnotist. Through this unique set of experiences, I teach you how to better influence the VIPs of your life and your career. This is Daily Persuasion. Today we're talking about the job market. In the past several days, anecdotally in my own network and online through various channels, I'm a member of a number of different networking, business, trade association groups, and also casual general chats. And the job market sucks right now is what I am hearing one way or another from the working professionals. So you right now have the choice between higher paying yet extremely high stress, low flexibility jobs. You have highly personal fulfilling jobs that are inflexible, of course, also, and also very low paying. And you also have the high stress, low pay, low personal fulfillment jobs, which are by far the most common. People will say, well, the unemployment rate is lower than it has been. Yes, because the job market is so bad, we're hearing from across the board that people are willing to do anything just to pay off their student loan debt. I can sympathize. I'm not going to use empathize. Remember, empathy is a sin. I've done videos on this. I should do another one. I sympathize with job seekers who vote for a socialist. Remember how I've shared with you before, I was part of the, let's say, Bernie bro space back in 2016. I've shared this with you. In 2020, I went for 3 different candidates. I liked how Marianne Williamson was very much in favor of things like medical freedom, food freedom, adjusting laws that would prevent the conglomerization and corporatization of Americans' health. I really liked Tulsi Gabbard at the time. Ironically, she's Donald Trump's director of national intelligence because she was the most anti-war woman or person on that stage in 2020. And I liked Andrew Yang because he seemed to understand the dire situation of the young person. Social Security is insolvent by 2033 to 2035, somewhere in there. And we've got baby boomers who were promised a significant number of entitlements and prosperity that would be available to them as they got into their golden years, demanding the fulfillment of their promises. And they have the voting power, the number, and also the resources to force young people effectively to subsidize that. Young people coming of age today are the poorest that we have seen in the modern technological age. Now, of course, we can try to make ourselves feel better by saying, just imagine if you were born a peasant in the year 1350. Okay, but you weren't born a peasant in the year 1350. It can be helpful to imagine those scenarios and sort of put yourself in there to take the edge off your pain, but that doesn't solve the problem. That's just a daydream, right? And this is where I understand where Karl Marx was coming from. But Joshua, you wrote literally the book that is more anti-communist, anti-Marxist, anti-cultural Marxism than any book that has ever been written. Yes, that is correct. But you might also recall how, we're getting to the job market, I promise. You might also recall how, I have shared previously, how the based conservative professor I had in university, the one, I have 3 college degrees. I have an associate's, a bachelor's, and it's a professional designation, but it's considered a master's degree equivalent. This is what they told me, and I paid a lot of money for it, so I will go with what they said. This very well could be my own confirmation bias, or perhaps a confirmation payment bias. In any case, that one professor at college, he pointed out the argument for Marxism that Karl Marx was tapping into was the alienation of parents from their children, husbands and wives from each other, siblings from each other, alienation of tribes and kin and larger family units living together in communities, alienate them all to go work in factories, men 12 hours a day, women 12 hours a day, and of course the kids 12 hours a day, or they would beg and starve on the street and die. Okay. Not a great situation in industrial Europe for a lot of people. And the Communist Manifesto was a writing out of envy, resentment, and rage that a number of people, sort of a generation really, of people had during that time. Of course, the Communist Manifesto was not Marx's first writing. He had written on this, he and his contemporaries had written on the ills of the industrialization of the world. He correctly identified the problem. By the way, the left is generally effective at identifying any problem in any area. They are problem sniffers. This is true. It just turns out that the solution they come up with is worse than the problem. Exploitation of children, 12 hours a day. The Prussian education system, which comes from the Industrial Revolution, that's where you don't teach kids how to think, you teach them what to think. Education becomes an assembly line. That is Western education to this day. It's 200 years old. Those are real problems that Karl Marx and his contemporaries, socialists, communists even, they were aware of. But socialism and communism are worse solutions than the problem. The 4 waves of feminism have collectively done worse than the problems. And I've talked before about the origins of feminism. There's primarily the political feminism, which had ties to the communist movement. Remember that first wave feminism effectively launched with the beginning of the October Revolution, aka the Bolsheviks, aka the Soviet Union and the overthrow of the Tsarist regime. Okay, so feminism as a political movement is communism. Sorry. And there was a significant number of domestic terrorist attacks by first wave feminists in order to advance their political agenda. But let's say the emotional case for feminism is far more powerful, and that is simply alcoholism. You had a number of alcoholic husbands who beat their wives and worse, and their wives had no legal recourse, no political recourse. They had no voice. They could not own property, etc., etc. Okay, you know all the arguments, right? So there's certainly a humanitarian case for feminism that I want to differentiate from the political activism of feminism that involved domestic terrorism. That said, if you have seen any of the self-help author, and she is a good one, I will say, Teal Swan, she makes a fantastic case against the outcomes of feminism, saying that what feminism has caused to be done to women is worse. The solution is worse than the problem. Wow. So now when we think about the job market, young people, and even Gen X, I'm having a lot of conversation, a lot of tough conversation with people coming to me saying, I'm between jobs right now. It looks like I have a job that pays the same, but it's a 3-hour commute one way. Or I could take a job that's close by and pays half of what I did, and I couldn't even afford the mortgage, much less my student loan payments. So what do we do about that? In 2017, I addressed the millennial generation in my TED Talk called Solopreneurship, Create Your Dream Job from Scratch. And I want to walk that one back up out of the archives here 8 years later because Gen Z and Gen X need to hear what Joshua Lisec has to say. And that's this. There are companies who are hiring, of course. And then there are people who are looking for those jobs. But I want to ask you something. Why did those jobs exist in the first place? Well, because there's a job to be done. There are tasks to be completed. There are things to do at that company. What if you were to go to a job fair, or you to go to a networking event, Chamber of Commerce, and you strike up conversations with who's hiring? And what if, in talking with him, you learned about why the job that needs to exist in the first place? And what if you said, yes, I understand you're looking for a W-2, you're hiring a W-2, a full-time 8 to 5 sort of position here. And you, of course, are a job seeker. But what if you could offer them something better? And so you say, for example, oh, I understand, okay, that you're hiring a position here. Well, I have this company. It's a small company. It's primarily me. Understand it's a contract basis, sort of services that I take on and jobs that I do and gigs that I complete. And it sounds like the job that you're hiring for is a full-time position, which of course is high risk, and there's the insurance you have to pay for and all manner of other benefits that make the salary you have to pay an employee 1.5 times more expensive for the employer than the actual salary it is when they consider the cost of hiring someone. And then of course there's the risk they don't work out, and then there's the startup costs of getting the person onboarded and blah, 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 blah. So along come you and you say, what if, given that there's a particular task and a new project that needs to get completed inside of your company, well, that's what I do. And you can check out my portfolio here on my website. Oh, you have a website. You take this really seriously. Yes, you can learn about other projects I've completed for various companies in various capacities successfully that are exactly what you're looking for here. And it would be a 3-month contract, or it would be this one single project. And then you don't have to necessarily hire a W-2 person. It's low risk. And therefore, you have now, as a job seeker, become the lowest risk option. The lowest risk option. Probably cheaper, much cheaper than hiring a full-time position. Wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. Wow. But we don't need to hire this. Maybe you just solved my problem. Because remember, people who are looking to hire, they're getting breathed down their neck by various department heads saying, I have way too much work that needs to get done by too few people inside of my organization. I need help getting it done. We keep putting more and more people's plates, and their plates are getting smaller. I need more people at my table with more plates. So then you, as the person who's in charge of this set of tasks, you go over to the people who do the hiring and you say, hey, here's what we need brought into my organization. And you can say, oh, wow, yes, I can actually do better than a full-time person. I found a person who is a specialist in this, a contractor and a specialist. It's low risk for them because it doesn't work out. That's okay. They can still continue with the hiring, whatnot, or even continue the hiring process where you come in and take things. Now, what is this as the job seeker? What does you as the job seeker? How does this benefit you? Well, it gets your foot in the door, certainly. And it also empowers you personally to get more money, get more experience, get a bigger portfolio. And so now you think of yourself as a solopreneur. Yes, you're sort of an entrepreneur, but you're able to sort of build the phrase I've heard is a portfolio career, okay? A portfolio career where you have a number of different things that you do. And you also protect yourself from BS from companies by having multiple employers, so to speak, multiple potential companies you're doing this sort of thing for. And maybe there's an overlap over the 3-month or 6-month or year-long contracts or projects that you're working on. And you learn how to manage effectively 5 part-time jobs at once, which collectively pay 2.5 times more than the best full-time job you were looking at getting. And of course, you continually have to get new work, which you would understand. That's part of this process. Think of it as like a sort of sophisticated freelancing model, the portfolio career. This, I believe, is going to be the best way to solve what is the toughest job market problem we've seen in a generation, and that's daily persuasion.